Welcome back to the Chester Centurions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Bark, and today I'm joined by Craig Campbell, the founder of OpsPal, a fast-growing digital operations platform designed to take the chaos out of running a business. OpsPal removes paper, automates training, centralizes risk, procedures and tasks, and gives leaders a live view of what's happening across the organization, whether they're in sport, universities, hospitality, or any industry where compliance and consistency matter. Craig's background is pure operations, McDonald's, national training roles at LA Fitness, major hotel groups, and it shows. He understands systems, people, and performance at a level most businesses never reach. And when he couldn't find a tool that he needed during COVID, he built one. In this conversation, we cover why most companies think they're compliant until a claim proves otherwise, how to remove the manager bottleneck and free up huge amounts of time using simple video-based knowledge capture, and the real story behind OpsPal, the fears, the imposter syndrome, and a boss who quite literally shoved him into entrepreneurship. This episode is packed with practical insight, delivered with Craig's trademark honesty and no-nonsense approach. Let's dive in. So Craig, welcome to the Chester Centurion Podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you. So listen, before we get started today, Craig, I'd love to know a little bit more about OpsPal. Tell us a bit about the business.
Okay, so OpsPal is a digital operations software. It allows people to run the business, actually see what's happening live as it goes. I've been an operator all my life. That's all I've ever done is operate businesses, and I've always been looking for something to try and help me see exactly what's happening. During COVID, we decided to build something because there wasn't anything out there, and we're in. We're doing really well. It takes all the paper out of your business, all your risk, all your staff training, all your task management, all that type of stuff. So you know who's doing what and when, who's been trained, and it just gives you a full visual. So we're really enjoying growing the product.
Wonderful. And what kind of businesses would benefit from that?
Well, we quickly found, so we started off in sport because that was my background. So I used to work for the likes of LA Fitness as a national management trainer, De Beer hotels, that type of thing I'd done. So we started off in sport, but we quickly realized it's any business that has risk, procedures and policies, things they need their staff to do, and training that needs to stay updated, which is pretty much all of them. Mm-hmm. So we haven't really found a business that doesn't need it yet, but the fields we tend to be in are sports. But when we go into like a university, we end up then going into accommodation or catering or grounds because they realize that there's departments that have got to tend to know what's going on. So yeah, any business really.
Interesting, really interesting. And I guess, numbers don't lie. So it gathers all these stats. It allows you to protect yourself against risk. And tell us a bit more. What do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, so look, problems that people will have. So why was this built in the first place? The gentleman who built it with me, he was the director of sport in Reading Union. He got sued. So someone came in, there was an accident, and he couldn't prove that they had risk assessments that were up to date, that people had read them, that the policies and procedures that were meant to be followed had been trained in, and the tasks that had meant to have been completed had been done. So this is basically all the operational things that you do. So you allocate a risk assessment, you put it out to the departments that need it, and it creates a full induction for them. So we know every single person needs everything they need to for their job role, and they're covered. It's like having your induction on you at all times. But what I love about it is it's about freeing up management time. So you know what it's like as a manager. Someone comes, how do I do this? How do I do that? Well, let's say it's how do I change the printer roll, just as a really quick example. So you video it, you put it on, and no one had ever asked you that question ever again. And everyone who needs it would have been trained in it. And if they don't, they've got it there available for when they need it. So it's about trying to free up management time and whilst having this visual of what's going on across the whole of the business.
There's a couple of things in the back of that. One, what you said about I guess getting the fact that you've been trained and your PPE signed off is so important. It reminds me of a story I heard from a barrister once, and he was defending a company in court. he was defending it because they thought they had a pretty strong case, and this gentleman had sued them for loss of hearing, I think it was, and they said, well, wait a minute, we've got a full is it hygiene monitoring, I think, or an audio map of the entire factory. They knew the decibels in every square inch of that factory. And he said, here's the PPE that we supplied to our team. Here's the fact that they've signed for the PPE and the headphones, that the protectors they were using were the correct protectors for the decibel levels and the type of noise. And they had all that documented. And the gentleman that was defending or suing on behalf of the employee put the headphones on like this, front to back, and he says, where's the training records? When did you show him how to put them on? And I thought, gosh, come on, we need to rely on common sense sometimes. But the fact is, you need that audit trail. You need the audit trail to prove that you've done it, right?
Common sense is a really funny word, right? I do a lot of training courses because obviously my business also has consultancy involved in it, a bit like itself. And I always ask people in my course, what is common sense? Can you name something that's common sense, please? And they can't. Now, common ground and common practice, they're things that you go over a lot of times. And so common sense is one of those things that that you think everyone else should. It's a bit like manners, but they were trained in. So I'm a big fan of, that's why, in ours, you would take a video, this is how you put the PPE on, this is where you get it from. And it's about creating that actual sort of picture. And, I can create let's say we want to do how to clean a toilet. Well, to video it takes me about a minute longer than it does to actually do the job. Whereas to write a manual to do it and to get everyone to understand it. So we've got to move with the times.
Yeah, and I really like that element because, a well systemized business, one, it runs better, but two, it's worth more at sale, and having that operations manual, those methods of operation all documented will add multiples of EBITDA onto your business.
Definitely. And I think my very first job, Al, was McDonald's. Right. So while I was in sixth form college, while I was in university, I worked for McDonald's. And I still believe to this day, I've seen what good looks like. Now, was it the best job I ever had? No. Still to this day, it's the best company I've ever worked for.
We did this an event I did last week, and I think if I remember right, it turns over $48 billion a year. There's 160,000 employees in the UK. But the stat that was most surprising for me is the average age of an employee at McDonald's is 20 years old. Now, you don't have a $48 billion company run by 20-year-olds without great systems.
Well, this is the funny thing, is that the systems that they use are a means to an end. What their actual business is about real estate, right? So they've got every building in every town, all the best buildings and all the best locations, and somebody else has paid the mortgage, right? So when you take out the actual sort of process and procedure, what they do, it's absolute genius, right? So, because I saw what good, as soon as I left McDonald's, I went to the hotels, nice 5-star hotels, lovely. I could still see the gaps when they went doing things. It was unbelievable. So, yeah, I do love a good system.
Really interesting. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Maybe a bit weird, but with you on that one. So, listen, going back to when you started, what motivated you to start the business in the first place? What was the kind of drive force behind that decision to take on this entrepreneurial role?
Well, I'd always been in training roles. I'd always, from McDonald's, I was a trainer going around opening sites. Then I went into the VA, I ended up becoming a trainer, teaching people how to manage sites. Then I went to LA Fitness, where my job was the national management trainer. Well, I quickly realized that people didn't know what to do. And I just like helping people. I like lighting that fire out. I like getting that person who's got that. You can see there's something there. It might have been nullified for a while because they've had, poor management. But I love lighting that fire. I love seeing people grow and develop in what they do. So that was part of the reasoning behind it. Another reason was frustrations of, when I was the national man trainer of LA Fitness, we'd get training companies in and they weren't very good. And we'd be paying them quite a lot. And I was thinking, I think I could do a better job. So I think some of it was born through frustration. And also, I was sort of pushed by a very good boss who interviewed me for a particular role. And he said, what do you want to do in 5 years? And I said, I want to be on my own. And on December 2017, he basically said to me, you're ready. And I was like, okay. He said, you're more than ready. You said you were going to do it. You haven't got a job in January. So it was, at the time, I thought, it's a bit harsh, isn't it? Well, the reality behind it is I got work in January, I got work in February. By March, I just couldn't believe he hadn't done it beforehand. So those three things all sort of came together just to give me that ultimate push. But I just love helping people. I think that's one of my biggest things.
Can I dig around that for a second? You know, if you go
Yeah.
back to that conversation you had with your boss, and he says you're ready, I'm going to push you now. You need to go and do this on your own. What kind of emotions were you going through on the trip home?
The same issues that everyone has, I think, when they start a business is the imposter syndrome kicking in a little tiny bit. You know, am I good enough at this? Am I, you know, can I control the room? Now, I've been running courses for him, and I've been doing some of the stuff I was going to do for him. Right, I had a custom base of 125 councils and trusts throughout the UK. So I thought, you know what, I know there's certain ones I can pick off. So it was a cross between imposter syndrome and excitement. And the excitement was,
you know, there's a saying: if a decision doesn't fill you full of a little bit of fear and a little bit of excitement, it's probably the wrong decision in the first place. And that's exactly what you've described.
yeah, do you know what? I think everyone suffers with imposter syndrome, right? Because let's you know, everyone's winging it. You know, did Facebook look like this when it first started? You know, look at Windows, the first version of Windows, it wasn't very good, right? So but we're all trying to create these things and move them along. So once you understand that everyone's on that imposter journey, then it means that it makes you feel a bit better.
Love that. So now you're 8 years in, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. What are some of the sort of common misconceptions about running a business, and how did you go about addressing them?
Okay, so the first one is that you think you're going to have more time to yourself. Right. So, and that you can do what you want. Now, the reality behind it is that you end up doing everything. So you end up becoming the ultimate jack of all trades. You know, I went into it because I like training people. I didn't particularly like the admin. I didn't particularly like the finance. I didn't realize how much marketing I'd need to do. I didn't realize how much business growth I would need to do to change and adapt things. So, yeah, I think the common misconceptions are is that it's going to be easy and you're going to be able to do what you want. I think the biggest rule I learned very quickly is that you've got to be strict and disciplined with yourself. You've got to create time slots to do certain things at certain times, and you've got to create times for the things that you don't like doing.
Yeah, there's a great lesson there. Be strict, be disciplined with your time.
I think so,
and
yeah.
also be belligerent about doing the stuff that you don't want to do. You've got to get that done, or otherwise you're not going to grow the business.
Yeah, I think it's a common, you know, if someone wants to be a hairdresser or someone wants to be, it's because they love cutting hair or because they love doing weights or because they love running classes, right? It's not because they love running a business. So you've got to, I spent a lot of time right at the very beginning getting the business right so I could then enjoy the bits that I became good at. Often people do that the other way around, where they carry on doing the bit they do and this business thing sort of follows them behind. So I think it's really, you've got to understand the business side of it because that's what you're now running. You're not running a job.
Beautiful. Very, very well said. How do you maintain a work-life balance as a business owner? You know, and have you got any sort of personal rituals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
Okay. I think one that's easy to neglect is that I think you've got to look after yourself, because if you can look after yourself, you can look after your family. So I try and do about 100K of cycling a week. I think I started this last August, and I'm averaging around about 106, 107 over the last couple of, you know, since last August. So within a year. So I get out first thing in the morning, sometimes 5 o'clock. Sometimes I'll go out when the kids have gone to bed, depending on weather and lights and stuff. So first and foremost, I think you've got to be fit and healthy in yourself so you can be fit and healthy to run your business. Children, I want to see them more. When I was a national management trainer, I was always away. Well, now I make sure between 5 and 7:30 that I'm there for them, whatever they need, whether it's football trainer with me lad because I run his football team, or whether it's helping me daughter with homework, whatever it may be, whatever they need before between 5 and 7, we'd all sit down, have our tea. We're always together during that time. And when they go to bed, that's when I might jump back on and start doing some more work again. But the way I've allocated my time is that I'll make sure I'm doing fun things during that evening time. So that'll be when I'm doing business development or maybe a little bit of marketing or whatever it may be. But it's about, it goes back to that discipline and structure. You know, you've really got to, the easiest thing is to carry on working, but it doesn't always mean you're effective.
Wow. What do you mean by effective?
Well, I know a lot of people who do 12, 14-hour days who are effective for probably about the first 4. Right now, the reality behind it is by slicing and dicing my day, you must have you ever read the book Eat the Frog? So the first thing I do every morning is something that's really big and important. So I have 5 important things that I do at the beginning of every day. Once they're done, I can then concentrate on my business and driving whatever it is I need to do. So I think the key behind it is just making sure. I can't say it more. It's this discipline. It's this making sure that we are strict with ourselves, because it's so easy to sit there scrolling through LinkedIn pointlessly, or to see what other people are doing. No offense, but I'm not really bothered about what other people are doing, because if I concentrate on what I'm doing, I'll make a difference. If I concentrate on what other people are doing, I'll get anxiety, I'll get different things. So it's about not wasting time. It's about being as effective as you can with the time that you've got.
Beautiful. Real big lesson there as well. And if you haven't read Eat That Frog for Brian Tracy, then it's almost a must for a business owner. There's so many. I mean, Brian's probably the number one in the world at time mastery. He's been gracious enough to put it all into text for us for £7.99. It's
amazing.
A no-brainer, isn't it?
And do you know what? Procrastination is the thief of time, right? It's the more you put things off and put it off and put it off. And if you write yourself a list every day and the same stuff keeps appearing, then you're not doing something right. So the key behind it is plan your time effectively and use it. It's your time. Don't waste it.
And if you haven't got time to read the time mastery book, then,
well, it's a stitch in time, right? I think that's the point, isn't it? Is that that's part of what you have to do is how do you develop yourself and how do you develop your business? If that's not part of your business plan, then your business is going to stay static.
Beautiful. So listen, business is moving faster than I guess it's ever moved. How do you stay adaptable to change? And are there any specific strategies you use as a business to remain innovative?
I allocate 15% of my working week on developing me and the business. So it may be I've got to do certain courses every now and again and make sure that I'm utilising the skills that I get from them. But the key behind it is that we in our business, rather than having the same meeting every single, so when we first started the business, we'd have a meeting every Monday and we'd say all the same things, and we haven't had a chance to do anything yet because we've all been busy. We then changed the focus of the business. So the first Monday every week we talk about sales. The second one we talk about our customers. The third one we talk about the product and how we develop it. And the fourth one we talk about our business. Right now, in every single one of those meetings, there's a section to say, how have we improved the sales process? How have we improved our customer journeys? And look, I'll accept 1 month out of the 12 where we haven't done anything. But if the person who's in charge of customers comes back after 2 months and says, I haven't had a chance to do anything, you haven't had a chance to make it better for our customers. So it's a really big focus in our business. So we all have 15% of our time to develop it. And I want to see how that's been used. And we have to talk about that during our meetings. I think if you make it accountable within meetings and things like that, it's something that has to happen, then it'll happen.
15% of your working week is spent on developing the business, moving the business forward, working on the business, you could call that. I really like this systemized approach to how you and your team are investing and spending your time. Really like it. How did the team react to that?
Well, the most important part for me as a manager, my job's to make them better. Right? So if I'm doing my job and making them better, then theoretically, I've always had this theory that as a manager, my job isn't to do anything. Right? My job is just to make everyone else better at what they do. So that way I can become the safety net for the business, not the bottleneck for the business. Right? So it's a big mistake the managers, I think, often make, where they, I'm the one that does the timesheet, I'm the one that does this, I'm the one that does the plan, and I'm the one that does the budgets. Now, if I don't do it, it doesn't happen. Right. So therefore, I'm developing the skills that these people have got. If someone's going to move on for me, they're going to move on for a much better job. And in the meantime, they might just do amazing work for me. So what we quickly find is that they can feel something happening. They can feel the growth in themselves. They can see the difference. When I go into businesses, I often ask this question to managers. And let's say, you were managing 2 other people and they were in that office now. I'd be saying to you, so can you show me how you made them better last month? Right. And again, if you can't, well, okay, the last 12 months. Okay. And if you can't, I bet you can by the time we leave, right? Or I bet you can within 2 months' time. So, but it's got to be about, if we're not making people better, we're not making the business. The best way to make your business better is by making the people better, right?
The best way of making the business better is by making the people better. Wow, what a takeaway.
Got to be.
Powerful stuff, really powerful stuff. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think you run an average business, you attract average people. You run a spectacular business and invest in your people, then you're going to have a spectacular business and a profitable one.
And I think Jurgen Klopp said something when he first started hiring people, right? He was like, why would I hire a nutritionist and then tell him to tell what people have to eat? So I think what's really important is you hire people because they've got certain skills. Let them use them. Mm-hmm. My marketeer is much better than me at the marketing. Why would I tell her what to do? My developer and coder, he's so much better at coding than I am. Right? I might tell him what I want, but when he tells me how he's going to do it, I'd be daft to tell him to do it a different way. So it's all about that belief in hiring people for the right reasons and letting them use what they've got. I've always used a disc profiling. So I've been a disc practitioner for the last sort of 20 odd years, and it's all about understanding strengths and weaknesses. Now, if I get people to do the things they're good at, they tend to be happy because people like doing things that they're good at. If I keep asking them to do things they're not good at, then I'm not probably going to get great results. So the understanding is using people to the best of what they've got and developing people along the way. I'm just a big fan of it.
Wonderful. Love it. What about the future, Craig? If you could offer us a glimpse into what's next for the business?
Okay, so I would say so in our product, people put in procedures, they put in risk assessments, they put in checks and tests. Now, we've done a little bit of the study. We've got like 17,000 risk assessments in the back end of our system. 98.6% of them, when they come up for review, just get a date change, right? So what we're about to go and do is we're about to go and embark on an AI journey. So let's say, for instance, someone's got fire risk assessments. They will basically say, have there been any legal changes or any legislation changes? It will come back and tell us what they are, and then we can decide whether we want to put them in. So we're going to go down this AI journey of actually making the context of what people do better and quicker. For me to go and review how to change a fire risk assessment, it's going to take me hours and probably even days, which is why they don't bother doing it. Right? But it's so important. And it might be, a training policy. It might be how to get the best out of this situation. Whether we like it or not, AI is coming, and anything that can look at billions of websites is much better than I am. So, we're going to embark on that journey. And I'm also I'm about to do some free best practice stuff. So, our product allows us to sort of reverse engineer what people need. So I've got a list of all the risk assessments, all the policies, all the procedures, all the training, all the tasks, all the open, close, handovers, all the different things that people need to do in business. And I'm willing to share it, right? And I'm willing to share it free of charge. So I'm embarking on a mission to try and upskill businesses. I think it's really important. You see this all the time. We both do it. We keep seeing the same things, the same problems. People go into business because they like doing the end result, right? But you've got to learn how to run that business if you want that end result to carry on. So I just want to help people do that, and I'm happy. That's my next little mission, is to embark on a little free best practice sessions.
Love it. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for being on, Craig. There's some incredible value there, and I think the lessons around how you use your time, how you're disciplined enough to schedule in time to work on the business as well as in the business, the systemized approach that you've got. There's a lot of takeaways there for me and for anybody watching, really. So the last question's a biggie though, so I hope you're strapped in. What are the biggest 3 pieces of advice that you could offer for someone thinking about starting their own business, or maybe they've started and they're facing challenges in the first couple of years? What would you be your top 3?
Right. Understand your KPIs. Know your business. Make sure your KPIs are live and kicking. I always remember that there was a college professor who did the thing with the vase, and he put some big rocks in and says, is it full? And everyone says, students say yes. He then put some pebbles in, shakes them round. Is it full now? They say yes. He put some sand in, shakes it round, and then he put some water in, right? But at every stage they thought it was full. Now, the key behind that is you can't get the rocks in last, right? You have to concentrate on the big things first and get them in. So you've got to be concentrating on the most important things in your business, and you have to know and breathe them, and they have to be alive. So, in terms of sales, operations, marketing, all that type of stuff, you've got to know the most important bits, and they've got to be alive. You've got to be able to I believe that you've got to constantly improve the business. So, it was a message I said a little bit earlier on, but you've got to develop your people and you've got to develop the business. Again, if I asked the question 2 months ago, how much better is your business now? And can you show me why and how? Right? If you're not developing it, then you're staying still. If you're staying still in such a fast moving environment, then there's a high likelihood that you'll end up like Woolworths or Blockbusters or Kodak. Right. So it doesn't matter what you've got at that moment in time. You've got to evolve. You've got to keep an eye on the future and you've got to keep moving your business forward. Last and not least is consistency and discipline. You've got to have a plan. I ask people this question. So how many tasks does it take to run your business on the average week? And people say loads. And I say, what's loads? Is loads 7,000? Is it 6? Is it 5? Is it 50? What is it? Right? Because if you don't know how to run your business. Right, which I think is a really important point. I did a presentation at a really large university, and I asked them how many procedures they had, and they said loads. And I said, "What's loads?" And they said, "Oh, we don't know." And I said, "But you've been going for 700 years nearly. How long is it going to take before we actually know this bit of information?" Me personally, I think knowing what's in your business and what you need to do to drive the business, if you don't know that, who does? And quite often they'll say, "Oh, we managers do." And then you'll ask the managers and they'll say, "Oh, I don't know because I think somebody else knows it." You've got to know what you do. If you don't know what you do, you're probably not doing it.
I'm going to ask you one more question. I haven't told you about this one, but you're obviously well read and you read business books. What would be your number one business book for someone starting their own business?
The Chimp Paradox.
Steve Peters.
Steve Peters, every day of the week. I've got 3 things that I sort of live by in terms of how I deal with people. So one of them is the Chimp Paradox, because I need to catch me. Right. And I need to understand when other people make certain decisions or certain things happen, that it's probably their chimp and not them. So that really, really helps me to understand and not explode. I use Maslow's hierarchy because I think people are really important. So if I've got a really good manager and, he loses his house or something happens in the family, I've got to build him back up before I can expect him to do the things he's doing now. So I think that's really important. And DISC, so I can try and understand people more, right? Is that my job is to adapt to other people. I can't, if I've got 2 people, right, I say like this is how far apart we are. If I adapt and I'm the bottom person, we get closer. I'm not in charge of this, but that is better. Now I can help them to adapt and come closer, but understanding people is huge. Understanding the position and the psychological safety that they're in, and understanding me and why I do things. I think they're the 3 sort of pillars that I use when I sort of try and work with people in business.
Thank you, Craig. And thank you for being on today. It's been an absolute
pleasure. Been a pleasure, mate.
It's been good fun. And hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Al.
Thank you. Cheers.